He is the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Thanks so much, Congressman, for joining us. I take it you're still very much on the fence. You haven't decided whether to support the President and the Secretary of State or to vote against the deal. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. We do have 60 days. I guess it's 50 some odd days. And I'm going to use at least the next few weeks to continue to read and reread the bill and have discussions. There's a lot to take in.
I read your statement, your opening statement today, just before the testimony began, and you outlined several deep concerns that you have. It sounds to me, based on all of those concerns, that you're leaning against this deal, but you tell me if that's right or wrong.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm leaning against it or for it. I'm saying that I think that when I look at the deal and I fully understand and appreciate the hard work that went into getting this deal, but there are certain things that give me pause for concern. This deal purports to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, but yet, the way I read it, at the end of 15 years, Iran is basically legitimized as a nuclear threshold state. They could produce highly enriched weapons-grade uranium with impunity, and that's troubling because that means that Iran is not prevented from having a bomb. It only postpones Iran having a bomb. And that's my major concern. I have to try to work around that, but that's a very major concern for me.
Well, you outlined at least 4 or 5 concerns in your statement about access to various sensitive sites in Iran, whether military sites, suspected nuclear sites. You talk about the billions, the tens of billions of dollars that would be freed up for Iran to use, not necessarily to have infrastructure development or housing or education, but to use to support international terrorism. Those are concerns that I guess a lot of people are going to have, and I wonder if you believe there will be enough Democrats out there who will vote against this agreement. Almost all the Republicans will vote against it. That will undermine the president's deal.
Well, I don't know how it'll turn out. I mean, obviously, everyone expects the deal initially to be rejected by Congress, and then when the president vetoes it, the question is, can there be a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate to override? That's a very difficult, I think, thing to accomplish. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's a very difficult thing to accomplish. Look, there are things in the deal, and you mentioned some of my concerns. You know, the fact that undeclared sites, the Iranians could have up to 24 days to keep inspectors out of it. That's very, very troublesome. Iran has been the leading supporter of terrorism in the Middle East and around the world for many, many years now. It's one of the reasons why Israel is so opposed to the plan, because Iran has been supporting with cash Hezbollah and Hamas. And Iran is going to be awash in cash. When the sanctions are ended, Iran's going to have more money than it knows what to do with. That's a concern. It's also a concern when just barely a week after the agreement was signed with the United States, the Ayatollah is back leading chants of death to America, death to Israel. You would think that just having signed a nuclear agreement, he would at least temper the rhetoric. So there are concerns, and I think it's important for those concerns to be raised. I think the administration, though, when it talks about you have to consider the alternatives, is right. It's not a matter of the deal or nothing. It's a matter of what are the alternatives if a deal is rejected, and I think that's something that we all have to look at as well.
Congressman, the Secretary of State today was asked about those 4 American citizens currently being held in Iran. I'm going to play for you what he said. Listen to this.
My last conversation with Foreign Minister Zarif and with the brother of the president was regarding the 4 people being held, the 4 American citizens. And we have followed up on that conversation since then. We are in direct conversations. That's all I'm going to say here today. But I hope that they will be returned to be with their families.
Your colleague, Representative Dan Kildee, is a Democrat from Michigan who's been working very hard to get one of those Americans, Amir Hekmati. He wants them all released. He said in this statement, he said, if Iran were to do so, release those 4 Americans soon, he said that would show Iran is serious about rejoining the global community, might have an impact on how these various undecided members would vote. Would the release of these Americans have an impact on your final decision?
Well, it would be one factor. I don't know how much of an impact it would have, but it would be one factor. Look, I think it's outrageous that Iran continues to keep our citizens in jails at a time when we're signing a nuclear agreement with them. I understand that we didn't want our people to be used as bargaining chips, so we really didn't want to make them part of the deal. But the fact of the matter is, if they weren't released beforehand, they should certainly be released now. And if they're not released, I think it shows incredibly bad faith on Iran's part, which would give me and others pause to think about whether Iran can ever be counted on to keep any of its commitments. We know they're bad actors. They've been bad actors for many years. They're the leading sponsor of terrorism around the world. So I think we all look at Iran, or at least I do, with a bit of skepticism. They release the Americans, that would factor in. Whether it would be the decisive factor, I really don't know.
Elliot Engel is the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks very much.
Thanks, Wolf. Always a pleasure.
Still to come.